"You see," explained Mr. F., lowering his voice considerably, "Mr. P., Mr. Q., and Mr. R. were poor but extremely inventive scientists when they were picked by Mr. M. to come to Krakatoa. They are all three they are all three of them fascinated with the extraordinary power and many uses of the electric current. It was they who insisted that the electric generator be attached to the already heavily burdened steam engine in the cellar. I think all of their new-found wealth has gone a little to their heads. Mr. M. wasn't awfully anxious to turn over his living room to them. He feels that their ideas are perhaps a little too advanced, even for Krakatoa. But what could he do? He had already given a room to each of the other families to work on, so he felt obliged to turn over the living room to these three remaining inventors. What in the world did they do to it? Electrified all of the chairs and the couch, said Mr. F. in the hushed whisper of a man who is describing the work of a maniac. "What for?" I exclaimed hastily as I was about to enter the living room. "They say it's to move around the room more easily. I'll show you how they work." I wasn't too anxious to walk into this electric living room, but felt that it was safe to follow Mr. F. wherever he went. The floor was made of steel. The chairs all had a decidedly unusual look about them. First of all, on the left arm of the chairs, they were all armchairs, there was a little tiller much like the tiller of a sailboat. The chairs were on little wheels. There was a rod up the back of these chairs with sort of a steel brush on the end of it, which touched the ceiling. The ceiling was covered with a wire mesh. The scientists who improved this room say that man spends too much effort moving his chair around the room or walking from his chair to the window, bookcase, or table to get his pipe and so forth. They figured out that some men walk an unnecessary half-mile a day just around the living room. These chairs are supposed to save people this trouble. "Look," he said. He sat down in an armchair and drew the tiller around in front of him. "I shall now move effortlessly around the card table and stop in front of the window. There is a button at the end of this tiller which I will press to start me off. I will steer the chair with the tiller and stop it by taking my thumb off the button. Are you ready?" "Go ahead," I said, backing into a corner. Mr. F. pushed the button in the tip of the tiller. The chair shot around the table at breakneck speed, stopped in front of the window with such suddenness that Mr. F. was plunged headfirst out of the chair, out through the open window. A shower of blue sparks followed the trail of the chair as the brush rubbed on the mesh ceiling. "There," said Mr. F., climbing through the window out of breath and with a most distressed look on his face. "You see that this is hardly what one might call an improvement in living rooms." "Why don't they slow them down a bit?" I asked. "The scientists who designed these infernal machines insist that they could slow them down. But Mr. and Mrs. M. have had so many sad experiences, such as shocks and bumps, in the room that they refuse to have electric chairs of any sort. M1 and M2 are crazy about them, however. The room has been turned over to them, and their playroom has been made into a living room for Mr. M. and Mrs. M. All of the children on the island spend many hours a day driving these easy chairs around the room, yelling and screaming and bumping into each other. The couch holds about 4 children, and it is the fastest in the room. I would hate to predict what will become of this younger, mechanically minded generation." I agreed that the electrical age we were entering was indeed frightening. "What are the bedrooms belonging to M1 and M2 like?" I asked. "Are they furnished with beds and continuous sheets, too?" "No," said Mr. F. after seeing the chairs and tables we installed in the dining room. "They designed beds of their own. Their beds have levers on them and move up and down. Their rooms have skylights, like the upstairs rooms of most Moroccan houses. They can move their beds up to the ceiling and look through the skylights at the stars. Or they can open the skylights and move right on up onto the roof on hot nights. A little over the height of the roof is as far up as they'll go. On the other hand, they can lower their beds right through the floor of their bedrooms into their bathrooms below. We're having a hard time deciding what sort of bed we are going to install in our own houses. The bed with continuous sheets of Mr. and Mrs. M, or the elevator bed of M1 and M2. Both models have many fine features. You'll have to agree. The other rooms in the house have improvements too, such as walls divided into decorating revolving panels, which permit a complete change of decor at the press of a button. Kitchens with dishwashing and drying machines. The whole house has every imaginable convenience, we believe. I have shown you all of its most spectacular aspects. It leaves me speechless, I muttered, but then, as I started thinking it all over, I suddenly exclaimed in a very loud voice, "I'm a balloonist, and I must admit this kind of efficiency rather bores me. For instance, I far prefer your stunning and elaborately elegant Hall of Mirrors dining room to the mechanized mushroom grove we just visited." It seems strange to me that mechanical progress always seems to leave the slower demands of elegance far behind. With all the peace and spare time on this lovely island, why should any part of your lives be speeded up? "Many of us are in complete agreement with you," said Mr. F. "The artists all are. The scientists express themselves through a different medium. You are a balloonist. If you are interested, I will show you the two remaining innovations we have made on this island. One of them, our balloon merry-go-round, combines the two sports most dependent on nature, ballooning and sailing, and should please you immensely. On the success of the other invention, the lives of the families of Krakatoa depend. I saw your balloon, the Globe, and I know that you are a balloonist of great ingenuity. I am sure you will like these two balloon inventions." "Ladies and gentlemen," pronounced Professor William Waterman Sherman, "before telling you of the two balloon inventions of Krakatoa, I'm going to call a 15-minute intermission. This will give you a chance to digest the many inventions I have already discussed, and it will give me a few moments of rest. The end of my story is, I suppose, the most exciting part of it. For as you know, from having read your newspapers during the last month, the time is near at hand in this account for the lovely island of Krakatoa to start blowing up. Thank you very much for having been such an excellent audience up to this time. Come back in 15 minutes and I'll tell you of two extraordinary inventions and of one history-making explosion. Thank you." The audience spent 3 of their 15 minutes applauding and cheering, and then went outside for a stretch and a breath of fresh air. Professor Sherman poured himself a glass of water, drank it, stretched out on his bed, looked up at the ceiling, and prepared to spend a most comfortable and relaxed intermission.